Now, since 5 will be our major chapter, we are going to take a little bit of time to go over the summary. Again, I'm not going to read every single thing, but just to show you that it is available as you prepare for your test on chapter 5. So here they're giving you the key terms and concepts. They're giving you examples of everything, and they're giving you some practice exercises. So what is a polynomial? A series of terms separated by pluses and minuses, and there are no variables in the denominator, or in the numerator variables with negative exponents. Then the degree of the term is the sum of the exponents on the variables. Coefficient is the numerical part that is associated with the variable. It's also considered a constant. The leading term is the polynomial with the highest degree. Leading coefficient is the number that's part of that leading term. Now, the degree of the polynomial, once you figure out which is the largest individual term, that is the degree of that term, that is also the degree of the polynomial. It's just the one term that is the largest. Sometimes students add them all together, all of the different terms. No, that's wrong. Now, if it's a multiple choice, they'll probably give you that as a choice, but that's wrong. And then we have special names: monomial for 1, binomial for 2, trinomial for 3. And when we add polynomials, we do so by combining like terms. A like term has exactly the same exponent on the variable. Could be in different order. Let me just go over that. So if we had 3ab plus 4ba, even though they're not exactly the same, they are in a sense, because you could switch around this order and they would be the same. So you would just add the numerical coefficient, which is a 3 or a 4, and you get 7ab. Now, when we subtract, the key is, there's the subtraction, and then what is following is in parentheses. You take away the parentheses and just change the signs. That becomes a negative 4x. This becomes a positive x squared. And we had said an excellent technique is to line these up in vertical columns. And we also said when we multiply, again, you could do it horizontally, but vertical way and then getting them in like term columns. Look at your notes and your homework log for examples of this. Hopefully that was the way you did it. All right, we had some special products. We talked about the FOIL. We talked about squaring binomials. We talked if one was positive, one was negative, and then multiplying conjugates. Then we talked about solving equations. What was the technique? Well, first we talked about just grouping like terms, getting rid of parentheses, and then factoring that out, and then equating it to 0. Then we also did factoring by grouping when there are 4 terms. Then there's the equation, the principle of the zero products. And again, anything you need to review, pause and look at it more carefully. All of this is available in your textbook. And then we did factoring of trinomials. Again, is it in standard form? Can you take out a common factor? Then 2 sets of parentheses. And then this would be your a term, which is just 1, so it's x times x. And then factors of 18 that are going to add up to 11 here. 9 times 2. The third term needs to be positive, so both of these will need to be negative. And when we FOIL, we get our middle term. Now, if this were an equation, we would just equal it to 0, and then we would equal each of these to 0, and here x would be 2, and here x would be 9. Now here they're not asking us to do this, I just added that on. Okay. And the same, when a is not a 1, the techniques would be similar, but then do we use a 6 and a 1 there, or a 3 and a 2? Again, often it's going to be the 3 and the 2. But if that didn't work, you might try the 6 and the 1. And then if nothing works, it's prime. And again, if this were an equation, we can do that. Just equal it to 0. Equal each of the factors to 0. This would be a negative 2/3. And this would be a positive 3/2 after we solve each of these equations. And we also went over the AC method. You can go back and watch that video. And again, what you do is you replace this with 2 terms that are the factors of AC. And in this case, it was a 4 and a 9 that will add up to a negative 5. But now we factor this by grouping, and we get that. And again, that could be an equation as well. And then we had some of these, the factoring, looks like a perfect square trinomial. We had to put that in the correct order, and it would factor into this. And this was factoring the difference of perfect squares, factors into its conjugate. Again, I'm so surprised they haven't used that word, but we're ahead of the game on that. And then the sum and differences of cubes, remembering the recipe we gave you for that. And once again, the recipe was a parenthesis for 2 terms, parenthesis for 3 terms, whatever the sign is, you put there, then opposite sign, then take the cube root of this, cube root of that, square this, multiply these 2 together. Now remember, the sign is fixed because of our rule. You would think it would be a positive, but no. Here it's positive, there it's opposite sign. And then finally you square the last term. That's what I had forgotten to put there when I showed you that other model. Okay. And then the Pythagorean Theorem, which we went over and we said was a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And then here is an example of one. and it looks like it's a 3, 4, 5 here. This would be a 3, this would be a 4, this would be a 5. I think we did one very similar to that in our lesson. Okay, I don't know if they have anything else. Now they do have some review exercises too, but your homework log of all the practices you've done, I think should be adequate. You don't have to do anything else. Okay, we'll wrap this up.